Facebook. Aaron,
Sure.
how you doing, brother?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
I am doing fucking fantastic, man.
Awesome.
Absolutely fantastic. So, before we get too far down the path, I'm gonna tell you what I'm drinking here today because I got another one of these Vena's spirit sippers, and this
Uh-huh.
one is called Shipwreck, and it has like let's see, what is it? It's got pineapple, banana, lemon, spices, and oranges with cane and or coconut sugar.
Wow.
And it says Vina is partial to rum or tequila for this particular mix. And so I charged this bad boy up with some Cuervo Especial, and
That
and
was
um
good, man.
and the trick is you have to pour your alcohol in and let it steep for like a couple of days. It's sort of like, I guess, like an alcohol tea.
Yeah.
So I've got that, and I've got my big ass cup, my Derrick stainless steel mug, um, and I've got some sparkling water and this mix here. So I'm gonna pour all that together while you tell me what you're drinking.
Yeah, I'm going light tonight. I had this on a couple weeks ago, or maybe before we took the break, but it's a Pueblo chili beer from a
Oh
local
yeah,
brewery called Walters here. So I'm going light tonight. So got my chili beer.
cool.
It's good, man. I like it. It's definitely become my favorite. It's spicy though.
Yeah, I can't wait to connect with you. There's so many drinks that we're gonna have to like have on tap when we actually get together, because I mean it's gonna be y'all listen. This is gonna be a party. I mean this is gonna be like a fucking family reunion, and this revolution will be televised, at least part of it.
Yes, it will. Did How was your drink last week, Derek? I was curious. That sounded good. I've never tried anything like that.
So I think that was the Vena, what was it? It was some God dang, it was blueberry something, but it was
It was
kind of,
like a fruit mix that you did the
yeah,
same thing. You
it was
soaked
the
that
same thing,
almond.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that was amazing. That was one, my wife got me these for Christmas, right?
Mhm.
And these are, I mean, it's like a party in a glass, you know. So and stay tuned, man, because I've reached out to these people,
Ah,
because we need sponsors.
yeah, yeah, me too, for sure.
So let's see who's out here in the comments. My sister Sandy. Sandy, hey girl, what's up? We talked to her. Yes, I talked to her yesterday. Benjamin Cassidy is here. Ben Urban, my dude.
Yeah,
And he and Beth just celebrated an anniversary. So happy anniversary to
yep.
y'all. And Tommy Payne, which I love it. I love this guy's name. If this is his real name, because Thomas Paine is one of my favorite people from the American Revolution.
Awesome.
Oh my God, this is this is amazing. I mean, it's two for two. Anyway, so we have a subject,
Yep.
and shall you take it, or shall I take it, or how do you want to? What do you want to do this week, man?
I've led off. I think the last couple times. I'll let you lead off on this.
Okay, well, you know, sex, sexuality, and religion. I figure that if we're gonna go for explosiveness, man, that's about as explosive as you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to religion, people don't like to talk about sex, and they sure as fuck don't like to talk about sexuality.
Right.
And these two things, this is the thing that gets me. Like, if you believe in a God that knows your very framework, that knows the very fiber of your being, that if this God is that God, then that God created you to be sexually pleased. And when you reduce this into something that is dirty or nasty or can't be talked about, it's crazy. And there are all kinds of things. Like, I remember being at one point kind of uptight about pornography and things, because we're going to cover some stuff. We're going to talk about pornography. We'll talk about masturbation. We're going to talk about a lot of these fun subjects that we didn't get to talk about when we were preachers, when we were pastors,
Right.
right?
Right.
But we're gonna talk about these things, but I also want to talk about this from the standpoint of people who still, that if you believe in God and God sees everything, the God is omniscient, he sees it all. That means God's got a bigger and better collection than Pornhub ever dreamed of, and that's where I'm going to start.
That's funny. Yeah. So interesting little tidbit, and I don't want to. I want to keep this as light as we can because it's a heavy subject, right?
Okay.
And I don't want to trigger anybody that's been traumatized. So, little trigger warning. I'm going to try my best to stay away from that. But when we started the religious trauma recovery page a year or so ago, year and a half ago, whatever it was, I took a soft survey on Facebook. What were the biggest issues that traumatized people from their experience in religion? And some of the issues that came up was, and then I just let them type it in the comments. I didn't have like answers for them.
Yeah.
Some of the comments were, fear of going to hell, some things that I expected. Fear of going to hell, the social trauma that you get from, not being part of the group, being part of the group, not being part of the group, not being able to ask questions, friends turning on you, that kind of stuff. The number one answer by far was
get ready.
Addressed issues of sexuality. Now, here's the thing. Most of the time, when you think of religion and sexual abuse or sexual trauma, you're going to think of the clergy, Sunday school teacher, whatever, that perpetrated a sexual crime. And the issue on perpetrating sexual crimes is consent, right? It's all about consent. These issues that were being brought up in the religious trauma recovery group had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with sexual shaming, sexual repression, body shaming, especially among women and little girls.
Yeah.
And I never did get that, Derrick. I mean, I have had a pretty strong, because, sexuality is a spectrum. There are some asexual people out there. They just don't have any interest in it at all, one way or the other. But that was certainly not me. So I'm just trying to say, I was red-blooded American. But I don't get this, like, I never really got turned on by a shoulder blade or a kneecap or an elbow.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being at a church in the South where a girl had some kind of a dress that was showing her shoulders.
Yeah.
And the pastor's wife made her cover up.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm like, or, your skirt is too short.
Hang on, I got one for you. There is a division of the Church of God in Christ, or a schism, if you will, the Church of God in Christ, that women cannot wear open-toed shoes or shoes that show toe cleavage because somebody had a fucking foot fetish.
Okay, I got a better one for you.
I'll see your foot fetish and I'll raise you.
That's true story. Yeah, exactly. This is true story. It was a kids camp. It was like a teenager camp, high school camp. I'm tempted to say the denominational name, but I won't.
Oh, please.
It was Assembly of God.
Okay, there. Thank you.
And this old-time preacher, old-time Pentecostal
which, by the way, Assemblies of God is just white Kojic, by the way.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. Exactly right about that. And he was railing on the lack of modesty among this generation in his sermon. So he starts railing on thongs. And he says, I'm seeing all these girls wearing thongs and, just going off about how God must hate thongs and all this stuff. And so he said, if you wear thongs or you're wearing thongs, I want you to stand up right now. And you know how they do these gradual things. Raise your hand, stand up, come down the front and stuff. So he has all these poor teenage kids crying, going down to the front. And he says, okay, now every single one of you that's wearing a thong or wearing those thongs, he says, I want you to take them off right now and leave them at the altar here.
Oh.
Because Derrick, that back in the day, we used to call the flip-flop shoes thongs.
Yeah.
He was talking about flip-flops.
Yeah, Brittany just chimed in. She said, "Were you talking about booty thongs or sandal thongs?"
Yeah, well, that's lost in translation, right? Because he was talking about sandal thongs, but nobody uses that term anymore in that generation. So they all thought he meant the panty thongs or the booty thongs. So imagine their confusion when he up there and he said, "I'll take these off right now and leave them at the altar."
Oh my God!
What a disaster!
At this point, we're going to stop the service for our panty offering. Oh my God! Oh my! Woo.
Yeah, religion will make you crazy, man. I keep saying it.
And you were talking about pastors, they cover up women's shoulders. And I remember one time I was an associate pastor in a church. It's in Arkansas, and these three girls came in, and they all had like their skirts were so short that if they moved a certain way, they'd have to charge admission. And and I remember somebody pulling me, say, hey, get these cloths and put them over these girls' legs, because somebody, well, first of all, the ushers, they want to sit you up close to the front. And for some reason, they sat these girls right smack dab in the front. And I'm like, what are you? I mean, I could, as a guy, I'm like, a heterosexual male. I was like, yeah, I could see where that could be distracting. But I mean, like, is it that distracting where you can't focus on? Anyway, this is the funny thing. This all goes back to, like, ladies and gentlemen, if you have your Bibles, open your book to Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. Mm-hmm. And you know the story that Eve bit the fruit and she gave it to Adam. Adam bit the fruit and then said that they hid because they were naked. Mm-hmm. Well, wait a second. Clothes hadn't been invented yet, so they were naked,
right?
Already. But then it's like God, and now God is supposed to be omniscient, and He says, "Who told you?" Who told you?
Yeah.
And so we begin on the slope of shame from the very beginning. And I'm like, you're created with these bodies, and these bodies are filled with all kinds of chemicals and hormones and all of these things that are designed to be aroused by visual stimulation, by oral stimulation, by all of these different inputs, right?
Right.
But it's like all of a sudden this whole thing is become an object of shame.
Yep.
And this is the thing, I really believe, and I was talking with somebody today, a lady who used to be a member of our church, and she was just really surprised at where I am now. But I was like, I said, we live in the information age. I mean, it's like you can Google and find out how much bullshit is involved in Christianity. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. Well, you know, the thing is, and I said this too. I gotta throw this in here. This is bonus content, by the way. That that the editors of the Bible put a safety valve in the Bible. You know what I mean? They basically said that in the latter days there will be people who depart from the faith, that give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils and blah blah blah. In other words, these smart people knew that people weren't going to stay stupid forever. So they had to throw in a safety valve that says if somebody comes back and says that any of this is bullshit, you can say this. No, this is not. You're the one that's on the bullshit, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, that was that was the thing. So now you can go back and you can look at okay, we look at sexuality from a physiological standpoint, right?
Mhm.
And there is no shame in this. We look at it from an aesthetic standpoint, because you talked about body shaming, right? And so people get caught up in this physical um expectation or physical paradigm of beauty, or what beauty is supposed to be, right? And so you get hung up on all of this. And so all of these things, when you take it and put it all in the pot and mix it together, it's a toxic stew that basically it creates shame, it creates confusion, it creates doubt, it creates friction,
Mhm.
all of these things. And man, this is a hell of a subject to pick, because there are so many different directions we can go in, and so many sub subjects that,
Mhm.
that we could touch. But
Yeah.
I want to talk about this one. Let's talk about this one thing first of all. Let's talk about sexuality
Okay.
for starters, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And so here's the thing, like for the Heretic Happy Hour, we did an episode, and I'm giving some advance notice, not too much, but we had a friend of mine, a pastor who is openly gay, as our guest. And one of the things that he did is he did a study. I think it was like a 7-week study on Facebook Live about how the clobber passages around what they use to uh, rail against homosexuality, they really don't mean that at all. They deal with temple prostitution. They deal with child abuse. Abusing young men or young women. They deal with things that have absolutely nothing to do with LGBTQ plus, right?
Right.
But they have used this. They have weaponized these passages in order uh, to create further repression and suppress the voices of the LGBTQ community. So one of the things that I want to talk about is sexuality. I mean, listen, it, is it fixed like like Bible humpers say that it is, or is it fluid? Is it like a spectrum? I mean, what is your take on that, man?
Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, I can take that so many different directions. First of all, I want to say I agree. I think that there's a lot lost in translation, just like with the thongs, the thong issue, right?
Yeah.
It's my understanding the word that gets translated sexual immorality, the Greek word is porneia,
Mhm.
and it literally speaks to sexual exploitation. And again, like you said, it was common for in the Greco world, to the Hellenized world, to have boy slaves
Yep.
that served as sexual partners for their masters. Um, uh, let me come back to what I said about consent. Let me do it this way.
Okay.
Sexual crimes have to do with the consent of the individuals that are involved. If you violate someone's consent, like we recognize as a society, as Christians, the sacredness of your body and
Mhm.
personal choice when it comes to consenting or not consenting to a sexual act. But then somehow, as Christians, and sometimes as society as well, we flip the script And now all of a sudden, something that's so personal and that you should have choice about, we want to regulate in terms of your sexual preferences or your sexual identity or your sexual orientation.
Yep.
So here's where I'm at with it, Derrick. It is probably the most personal thing in the world. There's probably nothing that's more personal to a person than their sexuality, and that's covering orientation, identity, the whole thing. And it's so sacred. We recognize that it's so sacred that we say sexual content or contact without consent is a crime.
Right.
But then we flip the script and say, but when it comes to any of these other sexual expressions, you have to do it a certain way. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you don't get the same personal freedom of expression that we're honoring on this side over here when it comes to consent. But if you want to consent to do something with a consenting adult or adults, now all of a sudden we want to interfere and get involved.
Right.
So my thing is, sexuality is on a spectrum. You can have heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual. Those are the ones most people are familiar with. But there's all kinds of different categories.
Pansexual, asexual.
Yeah. And so my take on this is we need to find a way to honor individual choices on the same level that we honor individual choice when it comes to consent. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And this is a funny thing. Like men will say, I don't want gay men ogling over me, making unwanted advances toward me. But these same men will make catcalls to women. They'll objectify women.
Yep.
But it's like when you put the shoe on the other foot, it's like, no, that's not permitted. Well, okay, so here's the thing. If yes means yes, no means no, then consent means consent.
Right.
And then when you talked about being able to be secure in your person, being secure in your body, right? That means that that I as a man, I should be secure enough to be able to walk down the street and not have to worry about anybody objectifying me. And at the same time, that I should extend that same consent or level of consent or courtesy toward women or other men, right? So I'm not ogling, I'm not objectifying, and if you take that away from it, then I think that takes away some of the stigma. And the thing is that you have to also understand that in order for there to be consent, that there has to be an inquiry, because consent without inquiry is a blanket consent, and that opens the door up to a whole bunch of stuff. So that means that if an inquiry has to happen, that means me as a heterosexual male, I have to be secure enough in my person that if a homosexual or bisexual man speaks to me he offers an inquiry to see if there is consent,
Right.
that we can contend the conversation further. Now, that requires a change of thinking, because we've been conditioned to believe that, well, if some man makes a pass at me, I'm gonna whoop his ass, kind of thing. And you can't do that. You can't have that mentality and say that you honor the components of the inquiry and the consent.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm saying here is that in order to make this thing work so that there is peace, and that we begin to chip away at the stigmas around sexuality.
Yep.
First we have to take away uh the stigma of the inquiry prior to consent, because that's where it all breaks down. Because if I don't have the inquiry, I can never get the consent.
Yeah.
And if I never get the consent, then that means I'm going to make reckless moves toward you, disrespectful moves toward you, because I don't know whether the consent is there or not. I basically have to catcall
Yep.
for consent.
Yep. Yeah, I think this is such an important issue to mental health too, because here's what we do: stigmatizing or stigmatization or putting a stigma on something
Mhm.
leads to repression, and repression always leads to distortion. So here's what I mean by that: if we have a taboo or a stigma or something around a sexual practice or a person, whether it's a fetish or a sexual orientation or whatever it is, so that person feels shameful, dirty, unclean, unacceptable,
Mhm.
rejected, any of those things. Think about how negative those energies are, right?
Mm.
So because of that negative energy, then whatever is in there is going to be repressed. The person's going to try to push it down. They're going to try to deny it. They're going to try to change it. They're going to try to hide it, all this stuff. Now, you could think about it. It's incubating inside a pool of the lowest vibrations and energies, emotional vibrations and energies that we have. The desire doesn't go away.
Right.
It's incubating in that
Mm.
mess. So it's going to come out as distorted behavior. It's going to come out as violent and aggressive behavior. So, like, if I'm doing violence against myself because of my sexual energy and my sexual drive, like even in the church, being heterosexual, like one of the worst verses in the Bible is if a man looks to lust a woman, looks at a woman to lust after her in his heart, he's already committed adultery with her in his heart. And so how many guys try to get rid of that sexual energy that is their natural biology? And so now they're being violent to themselves. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if that doesn't get resolved, then oftentimes it's going to come out in a violent, forceful way. I'm trying to force myself not to feel these things.
Yep.
So eventually that pressure cooker is going to build up and I'm going to act out. So I think one of the answers to the problem that we have in society with sexual violence, sexual aggression, rape, sexual assault, all that stuff, is we have to not stigmatize what people are experiencing in terms of their own subjective personal sexual reality and identity. And I'll give you an example of this. I won't go into details, but there was parents of a young boy who was developing what appeared to be on the outside, a really unique sexual fetish. Let's just put it that way.
Mm.
It didn't involve other people. It involved an object. And
Okay.
so my advice was, instead of talking to this child, instead of coming at it from fear, being afraid, oh my God, am I raising a pervert? Or, you know how Christians are, right?
Mhm.
Take this child, buy him these items. Now, he was too young to understand any of the mechanics of sexuality.
Mhm.
Buy these items, acknowledge that he likes them, buy these items, bring it out in the open and affirm him and celebrate it.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell you, Derrick, the moment those parents did that, it broke that thing on that child. Like, once it was out there and it was like, okay, Let's talk about this. Let's celebrate like this. Let's affirm this. This is not wrong. You're okay to want this and to have this. Child lost interest.
Very good point. Because what happens is that when you make something taboo and you stigmatize it, a lot of times people say, okay, I've got to express this as often as I can privately.
Yes.
And like you said, then it's like, okay, you get to a point where you don't want to exhibit it privately or express it privately. You have a need to express it externally. But because it hasn't been normalized, now you go out and you do something that's, you know, it's considered to be harmful or hurtful. And here's I'm going to change gears here
Okay.
because masturbation.
Yeah.
And again, to go back to this case that you gave with this kid
Mm-hmm.
and his sexual um, predisposition toward this object, right? Once that was brought out into the open, or it was able to be talked about or discussed, it it went away.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, me personally, and I'll tell you something, man. Like growing up, it was like, you know, if you got caught masturbating, you know, you're saying, oh, you know, you're disappointing God, and you know, and you're gonna go to hell. And I'm like, okay, so let me try to have sex with as many women as I can. And they say, oh no, you can't. That's not the answer either. You gotta. And I'm like, you know, god damn, right? So
Uh,
the the thing is that, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm not encouraging anything like, you know, crazy. And I don't want to, let me stop. Let me stop there because I was about to say something judgmental, and I'm going to stop. Uh, because if you take away the stigma of something like masturbation, then it's like somebody is not, like, you'll hear these stories about like some movie star that they catch him jacking off in the car, right? And all of a sudden it's like, ooh, this person is a pervert. Oh, are they a pervert, or have they, you know, they have something that has been stigmatized, and they've been forced to repress it, and so now they have money, they got fame, and all of this other stuff, and they're saying, you know, okay, I got to express this. But now you're doing it in a fashion that might cause harm to someone else. So anyway, let's talk about that, because again, we've been given all of these pleasure centers,
right.
this ability to receive and to give pleasure, but there are times when it either isn't prudent, or it isn't convenient, or it isn't even the desire to share with someone else, and you just want to, you want to have a moment by yourself. What's the problem with that?
It's funny because people that have grown up without religion, without these stigmas, that's the craziest thing in the world to them, that someone would think that masturbation was wrong. Because again, it goes back to, this goes back to body shaming and person shaming at their core. So you're talking about deeply personal issues when we talk about sexuality. You just are, because we're sexual beings. And again, I say that recognizing there are asexual people out there, because I don't want them to feel weird, you know, because they've been stigmatized too, because
Absolutely.
they don't fit into the conversation. But in my experience, you know, I've known relatively few asexual people in my life, that I knew that they were. You know what I mean? So you're gonna naturally, like, you like, think about this for a minute. I mean, This is so stupid. I mean, if you have a cramp in your foot, like your foot's just doing it on its own,
Right.
you're gonna reach down and rub it out. If you get, I know that's why I was laughing.
I mean the play on words,
I did that on purpose.
phrasing.
I even brought in the foot fetish with it. Yeah. So I mean, you get the point. So like, if you have, it's just natural. So what are we doing when we tell people, well, your body is yours. No one else can touch your body, but your body is yours. Oh, but you can't touch your body either.
Dude.
I mean, it's insane, Derrick. It's absolute insanity. And I don't get it. I'm convinced. I'll go off on another tangent here, and people have heard me say this one for years. I'm convinced that the repression of women in the church is all about sex with an organization that is led primarily by men.
That's exactly right.
That this
I
whole
completely agree.
Women, you've got to submit. You're not allowed in leadership, whatever. All of that is just an external projection of the inward repression. And if you're a dude in the church and you get turned on by an elbow or a shoulder or a kneecap or a midriff or too much cleavage, dude, that's your issue to handle. That's
right.
like you don't have to act on that shit. I mean, nobody's saying, even nobody is saying act on every sexual impulse that you have any more than we're saying act on every impulse you have to throat punch that person that you don't like. Nobody's saying that. I don't hear anybody anywhere saying that.
Right.
But somehow you start talking about these topics and people are afraid of, I don't know what they're afraid of. They're afraid of their own sexuality and they've been repressing it.
Yeah.
And anyway, you get my point. So
you know what, you and I, we talked about this, and I think trying to think who is it, because there's somebody on here. I think Doug has talked about this before, but the sacred feminine,
yeah,
right? And I saw this I saw this thing, a meme on Facebook. It said that some woman has said this, that I have a portal between my legs that brings life from the universe into the world. Put some respect on it. and I'm like, so a lot of this, I think, is designed to actually repress the sacred feminine, the divine feminine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when we do this, what happens is that we get a partial spiritual understanding, and our spirituality then becomes defined by masculinity and by masculinity only, and the objectivity of the divine feminine is completely lost. And so I think that's a problem. And let me say this, guys, I'm speaking to the dudes out here, that we all have a masculine and a feminine side, a masculine and a feminine energy. And if you repress that feminine energy, if you deny that feminine energy in yourself, then you become sexually repressive, but more importantly, you become spiritually repressive.
Mm-hmm.
And you lose the ability to express yourself in either capacity. And what happens is that you become sexually, emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually frustrated. All right.
Yeah, you brought up Doug, and Doug talks about this a lot. He talks about these topics a lot. And I remember the first time I had him on my channel, and he's watching, In fact, and I'm going to refer to his comment here in a minute. But first time I had him on my channel, he was talking about my YouTube channel. He was talking about these issues, and he brought up, you know, relationships in the future. And if Doug, if I'm misquoting you, set me straight here. But there's something like relationships in the future. You'll be sitting down with your partner and just openly discussing your sexual needs, wants, desires, whatever. And he mentioned like negotiating things like, and I'm not going to get this totally right, Doug. So if I'm misrepresenting you again, please set me straight. But negotiating things like I need to go to a strip club 5 times a year or something. You know, like I need a lap dance.
Yeah.
And I got triggered because I hadn't worked through this stuff on my own. I was still deconstructing, and I didn't get mad, but I could feel that thing rising up in me, like, oh my God, like, don't do that. And I mean, it's just crazy how we try to control that thing in me. That religious thing in me was still there, that was trying to control people's sexual choices and things like that. And it's all built on this presupposition. Now watch this. And it's all built on this presupposition that it's shameful or wrong. That's where we begin, as a unconscious presupposition. So when somebody ventures out into sexual behaviors that are consensual, but that we deem somehow to be inappropriate, we try to control it instead of just saying, hey, that's not my thing. But if that's your thing, nobody's getting hurt. You're not doing anything illegal. I don't have a problem with it. Right. I really had to get to that point. I don't have to control it. But I want to point out something else that Doug said here. He said self-pleasure and orgasm is spiritual medicine.
It
for
is.
Those who perceive it as sacred. Call it sin, and it produces negative energy. Now I'm going to open a can of worms here, Derrick, just because I know I can on this platform. I've been thinking about this. I've just been thinking about this because someone made a comment to me. A woman made a comment to me, and this was in a counseling setting, and we weren't talking on any topics of love or romance or sex or anything. She just made this comment. She said, if a woman is going to get paid more in this society, she has to get degrees. In other words, bachelor's degree, master's degree, etc. Because women specifically have to work with their minds primarily. And I saw something that I'd never seen before, because I thought about it. As a man, typically, you can go get a job because you're strong. You can go get a job as a mover because you're strong. Construction, professional sports. I mean, I know we have some women's professional sports leagues, but they don't bring in near the money that football does.
Right.
Or men's basketball or baseball. Like, there's this wide variety of ways that men use their bodies to make money. So women feel like I've got to use my mind. I've got to get my degrees in order to make money. So if we were to take a frame of sexuality being medicine, and Doug talks about this a lot. What's wrong with, in the right structure, what is wrong with sex work or sex workers?
I'm glad you went there, because this is a funny thing. Sex work has been so stigmatized, right? And here's the thing. Not everybody is cut out for a monogamous relationship. Right. There are some people that may not need a relationship at all. And so what happens is that a lot of these people, because they don't need or don't desire the relationship, they turn off the spigot of their sexuality. And what that does, I think, is it creates a handicap in your humanity. It creates a disability in your humanity. So here we have people who do sex work, that their job is simply to provide an outlet for the sexual proclivities of their customers. And what is wrong with that? Because here's the thing, there are people who enjoy and participate in the consumption of pornography,
Mm-hmm.
but they get their ass on their shoulders about sex work. And so there are, and let me say this, I'm going to say so I'm going to go really way out on a limb here, because I have friends who are morticians.
Okay.
That is a very difficult job. Most of you don't want to be a mortician, but
Right.
they serve a purpose in helping us to grieve, in helping us to preserve a memory, and also helping us to respectfully dispose of the remains of our loved ones.
Yeah.
It's a difficult job. I am on record as saying that my friends in the mortuary business have a ministry to society.
Yep.
Similarly,
Yeah.
sex work, it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to do it. Not everyone can do it. But it is what they call the oldest profession.
Right.
So that means there is a demand for it. There is a need for it. And I am going, and this is the limb that I'm going out on. I'm going all the way out to the spindliest branch off the trunk of the tree.
Okay.
And I am going to say on record that sex work is ministry.
Yep.
And I will say also that in the framework, or in the framework of mortuary service, that I believe that sex work is just as necessary and just as, if not more, honorable. And before anybody says anything about that, I'm going to tell you something, that some people are in sex work whether they choose whether they choose to admit it or not. Let me give you an example. There are women or men that a professional athlete can get that you and I cannot. And that's because they have access to money.
Right.
And so what happens is that, I look on Instagram. Instagram is really an interesting place, because there are many of these young ladies and young men out here. They're beautiful. They're beautiful people. And so they have what they call a thirst trap. They, because of their beauty, because of their physical attributes, they're able to get large number of looks, likes, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who these people are sexual with are not your average M1A1 people. They are wealthy people. And what that means is that somebody is paying for it. That's that's the deal. So here's the thing. There are people who are sex workers that either don't think they are or won't admit that they are, but they are because they are going to the highest bidder.
Mm. Mhm.
So the thing is that we have to get past this whole stigmatization of sex work and say that, okay, this is a necessary business, because there are some people, there are men that will never have a relationship, there are women that will never have a relationship, but they have sexual needs, sexual urges, they have desires, and sex work helps to bring that to bear. And it's a vital service in the idiom of today's pandemic based society, that they are essential work essential workers. Because what happens if these, what? So to go back to what Doug said about sexual pleasure being medicine, what happens when you don't get your medicine? Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop there because
No,
I've
I think it's good. You know, I have to wonder what would happen to society. Like, I'm just curious. Like, if it became legitimized, if it became regulated, and the reason I'm highlighting that is because I don't want people to misunderstand that we are in any way endorsing anything close to sex trafficking or sexual exploitation of
no, no,
prostitutes.
no, no, no,
We're talking
absolutely.
about the
Thanks
exact
for pointing that out.
opposite. We're talking about the exact opposite of that.
The
So,
consensual.
right. So what I'm saying is, if it became a legitimized operation that's not run on the black market, in other words, would sex crimes go down?
I think they would.
Well, I think they would too. I mean, what kind of a positive impact might that have on society? Would you have people who, you're right, they're terrible relationships. They don't do the emotional part well. They don't want the emotional part. Um, you know, their life's too busy, whatever. But they get in a relationship because that's the only legitimate means of gratifying or satisfying or releasing their sexual energy and desires.
Yep.
So if they had a legitimate way to buy that service, maybe there'd be less messed up, abusive relationships too. I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see
Yeah.
how that would play out in society on a macro scale.
I mean, think about this. Like, let's just say that you're in a pretty conventional sexual relationship, monogamous sexual relationship, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But you have a kink. You like BDSM,
Hmm.
right? And let's say that you're able to go out and engage with a sex worker to satisfy the BDSM kink,
Hmm.
which helps you to get that part of your sexuality, expressed. And
Hmm.
as a result, it doesn't cause you to put a demand on your partner who isn't into that. And so your relationship stays healthier.
Yeah.
I'm just, I think that you're right, that if we were to take the stigmatization off sex work and off, um, uh, man, take it off sex work, take it off masturbation, take it off sexuality, and here's another thing too, right? I had a really good friend that came out recently and said that he's bisexual.
Hmm.
Okay, and his wife knows, and his daughter knows, but it's like his parents and her parents, they have an issue with it. But the thing is that by him coming out and saying this, now he could say, okay, if there is something in that he feels the need to be expressed, and his wife knows about it, then that means that he can express that and have it not damage his relationship, because she's fully aware, he's fully aware, the family unit is all aware. So now you can go out and express this in such a way that it is not harmful to your family.
Yeah.
And I know that there are some people that they're all into the nuclear family and they're listening to this and they're like their heads are about to pop.
Yep.
But hear me out. Part of the reason why I think that people suffer the way they do is because they're not free to express themselves sexually.
Mhm.
And because we put all of these taboos, we put all these restraints, all these constraints on sexuality, and we call things taboo.
Mhm.
Now people are forced to let me put it this way, right? And I'm gonna this is totally off the subject, but I'm for the legalization of drugs.
Mhm.
Everything. I mean, people say, well, Derrick, what about heroin? Fuck it, yeah, legalize that too. Regulate it, make it safe, so that people who shoot up, they don't get AIDS, they don't get addicted, they don't all of these things, right? That they can enjoy this and not have it fuck their lives up, because if you take the stigmatization off of it, now it can be done in the daylight, and there's no need to run and crawl and hide to try to satisfy this urge. That's the whole thing. That if I could say, if there is an overarching premise of this discussion, is, people always say whatever's done in the dark will come to the light. Yes, that is absolutely right. But if you say that it doesn't need to be done in the dark in the first fucking place, then you don't have to worry about it coming out to the light.
Yeah.
Okay, I can stop there.
Okay, so this is probably where I'm going to open another can that we need to tackle at another time. But I'm just going to throw it out there just to get people's reaction and thoughts. Because you talked about the nuclear family. And the nuclear family, for most people, and for those of you that may not know what that term means, it just means mom, dad, kids. Monogamous, heterosexual relationship. That would be the nuclear family. It ain't
Hold on.
biblical.
Let me quick shout out. My friend Dr. Nicole Foster is on.
Okay.
And she calls herself the hippie theologian. She
Uh-huh.
is absolutely awesome. She's a very orthodox theologian, but she's also very contemporary, very modern. So Nicole, thanks for joining. I hope this is something that you could take back to your group. But anyway, Aaron, go ahead.
So the nuclear family, and the biggest ones that are threatened, the biggest protectors of the nuclear family are the evangelical Christians in this nation. Would you agree? The
Yep.
religious conservative right. Is that a fair
Absolutely.
statement?
Yep.
But here's the problem. Nuclear family is not biblical.
It really isn't.
And the truth of the matter is that marriage was a property agreement. It was about ownership, because you bought your wife.
Mm.
Literally, she was property. If you look at the anthropology of this, it didn't exist in the hunting gathering stage at all.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone in the hunter gatherer stage was polyamorous.
Mm.
When you started to own land and you needed a workforce, you needed kids, wives then became property. When property became a thing, when land became a thing. So it's part of the agricultural age. It developed in the age of agriculture. And in the Bible, you show me one place in the Bible where a person had a wedding ceremony in front of a religious figure where they took oaths.
Mm.
If that's the case, how did Jacob's father-in-law slip Leah in on him?
Exactly. Got him drunk. You wanted Rachel, but here we go.
So the premise in the Piscean age, this is going to make people's head explode. Marriage was about ownership.
Yep.
Adultery was about stealing, or it had to do with you're messing with somebody else's property. That's why, ladies, you're mentioned in the 10th commandment under thou shalt not covet. Think about this, Derrick. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thy neighbor's donkey,
Ass.
whatever,
Say ass, Aaron. Say ass.
thy neighbor's convertible BMW, or thy neighbor's. How come it didn't say anything about coveting thy neighbor's husband?
Mm.
Because they weren't property.
Mm.
I just
Yep.
leave that right there.
And that's the thing, because like, and let me say this, like I've said this about polygamy and polyamory. I remember when I first saw Sister Wives, and dude, my evangelical Christian head popped on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how the fuck do they manage that? But here's the thing, that if everyone in the agreement is a consenting adult and they make the choice, whether it's one husband and many wives or one wife and many husbands, who are we to judge?
Mm-hmm.
And again, the when people always talk about
Mm-hmm.
biblical marriage usually involved one guy and multiple wives.
Yep. And concubines and prostitutes and
Yeah.
basically sex workers.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, let's go to Solomon, who was ostensibly the wisest man that ever lived. Solomon had thousands of wives, concubines, and then he had a thing for prostitutes.
Yeah.
But this is Solomon, the wisest man in the Bible. The wisest man in the Bible thought with his dick. I'm just gonna put that out there. So again, this whole thing about sexuality, right? Sexuality, and I think we talked about this in our episode on mental health last week. We talked
Mm-hmm.
about a spectrum, that there are no hard and fast deterrents about where someone lands sexually. It's like, a person can be homosexual and have heterosexual tendencies, or heterosexual with homosexual tendencies, or heterosexual with bisexual tendencies, or they could be, asexual with homosexual or heterosexual tendencies. And this is a spectrum. There
Yeah.
are no hard and fast landing zones. That is very fluid, and it's subject to the emotional fluidity of the people who are practicing it. And the thing is, and again, if we can get to the point where we could say, okay, I honor the fluidity of this,
Mm-hmm.
I honor that this is something that is subject to change, and that if we're going to have relationships, that within our relationships we're able to say, okay, I have a desire for this, and be able to express it openly and honestly, and for the partner to honor and respect that.
Right.
Imagine how powerful relationships could become if we were to say, okay, I have this desire for polyamory, but it's not something that happens all the time. I go through these seasons. And if you say, okay, I'm willing to honor that season, then the relationship from an overarching standpoint is able to continue. I hope that made sense.
It made sense to me. And I think if people are honest, and this will be the last thing I'll say, if people are honest, if you're getting triggered by any of this, morally feeling triggered, or you know what I mean, ask yourself if you have not been pre-programmed to be predisposed and to those that sexuality and sexual expression is inherently wrong, shameful, or bad. Just ask yourself that question. Do the inner work and see that's not what really is triggering.
And that's really a good place to wrap it up, Aaron, because if we are going to be, and this is something that I say all the time, be intellectually honest. In other words, that you, if you believe something, don't veer off and say, well, I have these feelings, but I don't want to honor them. Or I know that people might have these feelings, but I don't want to honor them. That's intellectual dishonesty. And if you're going to be intellectually honest about this, then you have to say, okay, I understand that sexuality is a very fluid concept.
Right.
And that there are many different facets of this, and that I myself might manifest some different facets of this than what I was taught that I should. And also that there may be people out here who are working to serve people like me, to help me work through or to express things that I cannot express in a monogamous relationship or even in a polyamorous relationship. You
Right.
know, that you know, that dealing with people that do this is okay. And finally, that if I can't be with the one I love, and I happen to be with myself, that I can love the one I'm with.
Yes.
And that means
Yeah.
that if I want to touch myself or please myself, that it's okay.
Yeah.
And I know we've covered a lot of stuff, and this is such a highly nuanced topic.
Right.
You know, for those of you who are in the comments, I want to throw this back to you, that if there is something else um, that you think we could cover or we missed, please put it in the comments, and we're gonna read this stuff. But Aaron, before we go away,
Yeah.
let's go back and read through the comments, and let's talk to people, because this what I love about this whole platform that we're using now is that we we can actually see these comments in real time and actually talk to people. So I'm going to let you grab a few, and then I'll grab a few, and we'll go through that before we close up.
Sure. I think it's Gwendolyn. Hopefully, I'm saying that correct. If you can't horny yourself, then how the hell can you horny anyone else?
You know what? Let the church say amen to that.
The Bible is a polygamy party. People seem to agree that human trafficking would go down, sex crimes would go down. A few people comment.
Hang on for a second. How much time do you have here, Aaron? Before I,
I'm all right.
because Gwendolyn says, she says, I wish I could be live. I have so much to say on this. Being transgender has shown me so many new perceptions of how men and women interact. Gwendolyn, do you want to come on? Because I can send you the link. I can drop the link in here and we can open this up and make a party out of it. So Gwendolyn, the ball is in your court.
You got a smiley face, so I think definitely.
Okay, so watch this. Here we go. Watch what we do here. We're gonna say copy this link, and I'm gonna drop the link in here. Boom. Now I also see my friend Jermaine Thomas on here. Now I'm gonna say this about Jermaine. Jermaine is a very interesting guy. Uh, he he and I were Facebook friends, and then we went through a period where we were not Facebook friends because he's a right winger at one time, but I think he's he's kind of seen the light on that. So anyway, this link is in here, and if you want to click on the link, if you want to join the conversation, if you want to go live, all you have to do is click this link, and I can let you in because I think that I can let as many as 10 people in. This should be fun here.
Yeah, it would.
Oh, hey, Doug, I see you out there. You say, come on, come on. Hey, Doug, join in, man. Click that link. Click that link. I dare you, man. Come on, Gwen. Michael Black is saying, do it, Gwen.
Says switch to a modern browser, she says. Or they say.
Yeah, switch to Chrome, Google Chrome. Well, that'll do it. If you're using Internet Explorer, God help you. I mean, honestly, it's like if you're using Internet Explorer today, you're probably sexually repressed. I'm just going to put it out there. Hey, Carl Forehand is out here. Carl, you want to join in? Click the link. Doug is saying, be right back. Come on, Gwen. Click that link. I dare you. Click it. God damn it. Where's Brittany Hill? Come on, Brittany. I know you're a badass. Come on, click the link. Jeanette, you're another one, another badass out here. Well, there's Gwendolyn. All right, so watch this. Here we go. There she is.
All right.
Yay. I guess pronouns are she, her. I heard you saying.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay. Cool. I've never actually done this before. Okay. Okay, what were you guys talking about? Or you just wanted me to address what I was saying?
No, you just address what you're. Listen, you.
Well, I find that a lot of people that lash out against LGBT, especially transgender people, is because they're insecure with what they're in the closet about. So when they acknowledge kind of my beauty, or that they don't want to acknowledge my beauty because then that makes them have to face with their own insecurities. And you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. And I had a lot more in my mind. I'm just trying to remember. I wasn't expecting.
It's all right. We kind of put you on.
No, you said you had a lot more to say, so we want to give you the forum. Say what's on your mind.
Well, for sure. Like when I was trying to live as a man for a good portion of my life, and then being the woman I am, it's really been an interesting journey because I was treated very differently when I started being more beautiful and my natural self, and yeah, I really felt the misogyny that has on this world still, and I've never really had to be afraid to watch my drink, or like had to, where I'm walking or going home, and all of a sudden I have to like watch out for all this stuff. And
What's
Yeah.
it like? What's it like for you now to be able to live authentically?
Oh,
Like,
so
what's the
good.
difference mentally and emotionally? What's the difference between when you were struggling with living as a man, and now you're able to
describe the pain of it all? It's just like if anyone asks me, if you think death is the worst fate someone could have, I'd say you have a privileged life, because there's worse fates than death, and living not as yourself is so painful that all I wanted to do was die. And it took till I was 26 to figure it out, because when I was younger there was no resources about being transgender or anything, media representation, and so I just was thought there's something wrong with me forever without understanding why. And yeah, and I learned actually through intimacy and lust is when I learned who I am. And I think this goes into this whole discussion you guys were talking about, because lust is a good teacher of teaching you who you are and who other people are, who you can trust, because how they react around their desires shows you what kind of person they are. And if they respect boundaries or not, you can tell when their desires come out, which is why I have such a thing for succubuses, because they represent being free, wild, and trust my own instincts. And I'm forgetting my point here.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I love what you brought out about it lets you know what's inside of other people. It lets you know
it's no wonder so many extreme religious people are so messed up, because they don't even understand their own sexuality at all. And even though I said it jokingly, if you can't horny yourself, how can you horny anybody else? But it's true, because if you
that's quotable, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry,
I said that's quotable, by the way.
Yes.
If you can't horny yourself, you can't horny anybody else.
Yeah. So yeah, so lust has been my teacher where I've been lost, because I kind of had to go autopilot and figure out things on my own and go against the system.
So I've got a question for you, Gwendolyn. Right? Do you see yourself as a mirror through which other people see their own sexuality? Because here's the thing, right? People, I think that what happens is that when people see someone like you who is experiencing the freedom that you're experiencing, that now they have to take a step back and say, hey, am I missing something? Is there something in me that
And I think that's why people kind of lose control of themselves around me, especially for someone who doesn't explore. Sometimes some men, just even in public, they'll just come at me and want to kiss me. I'm like, whoa, because I unleash their ability to want to be free and explore who they are. And what was I gonna say? Come on, brain.
I think Doug wanted to jump on, but Doug, the link's in if you scroll down, the link is
the link's in the chat.
If you're using the app, just go click in the side to go into the web browser, because I just don't think it likes the Facebook app.
Okay.
You have to you have to click the link, and that'll open up a browser window. But Doug, I would love to have you on here. And it's funny, we have someone called Loveface XYZ. It says strips without clothing. Basically, I guess it's a sex worker that's advertising their wares. Hey, listen, Loveface, I just want to say this, that I don't mind you advertising, but if you're going to advertising, me and Aaron like to get paid.
That's right.
Well, you know what? I've done some escorting too, just to make meets end, and it's that's legit. I mean, people will freak out if it's it's abusing their bodies and shit, but you got people working in mines and factories destroying their bodies. What's the difference?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
You're getting a lot of love in here. Do you go by Gwendolyn or Gwen? Both.
That's fine. It's Gwen, not Gwen Stefani, but Gwyn, like wind.
Got it.
I mean, it's a little mistake, not a big deal, but
Thanks.
yeah.
Yeah. I see that. I see the mistake that I made.
I don't even notice it most of the time, but it's actually a character I got from a Dark Souls series. It's like a mixed gender deity called Gwendolyn, and I was like, that's my name. That's my name.
All right. Well, you're getting a lot of love in the chat.
Okay, what were we talking about though? I had more points to make. What was I going on a tangent about?
I'm not sure.
You talked about doing some escorting last. Last thing you talked about was doing some escorting, and
it was something before that because we were helping Doug get on. And then
helping Doug.
I forget. No, that's okay. Right. Okay. Actually, I want to touch more of how I got to learn who I was through lust and intimacy and stuff. Is actually in BDSM is what unraveled me. And in like grade 8, I met a girl my age, and for the first time, I got to experience intimacy in a different way. And I was like, I enjoyed being submissive and not having to lead. And then eventually just unraveled into who I am today. And yeah, for me, the lust is like the Force to a Jedi. It's like it teaches you who you are, and especially in relationships, it makes relationships so powerful. And because you keep learning more about your partner, and what the do's and don'ts. And it's like a dance that keeps getting better. And yeah. I don't know. Is there any questions?
Yeah, Gwen, what would you like other people to embrace the LBU, TIA plus, or whatever the other name?
I just say LGBT plus. It's okay to not everything. It's okay.
Right. People who are still in process with that, or people who haven't embraced that, or people who might bully you or oppress you. What would you want them to know about you? What would you want them to understand?
Well, that's a difficult thing because I debate with a lot of people who don't approve online. I try to be as kind, as peaceful as I can about it.
You're better than me.
Well, not to get off track with your question, but just to address that, it just kind of sucks that because often marginalized communities have to be on their best behavior because if they act, maybe not the best, it'll be used as ammunition against them by the mainstream. And or maybe I'm just talking to one person who's never interacted with a transgender person before. If they find me unpleasant, they may go on to hurt another transgender person. So my mindset's always just like, okay, just be polite, on your best behavior, and just state the facts, whoever you're debating with, and don't go down to the level of name calling because whoever you're debating with directly, they're never going to change. They're going to double down because they're in the spotlight. But for all the hundreds of people that are reading and watching, just keep it cool, state your facts, and then they're the ones that might change their mind.
That's great.
That's not the question you asked. You asked, what should I tell people that have a problem with me?
What do you want them to know about you? What if there was one thing you could to understand? What would it be?
I don't know what to say to that.
Not yet.
I guess it's just that we're all just trying to be our authentic selves, and this is who I am.
That's the thing.
And there was no choice in this other than either denying who I am or being who I am. Yeah. And unless you experience whatever the thing you have a problem with, or you have years of education, to legit education about the matter, then your opinion has no weight.
Yeah.
And which is often the case when I'm arguing with transphobic people.
Cool.
Hey, I'm wondering, you said you're Android. I'm wondering, can you copy the link and then paste it into your browser?
Yep.
Like you copy it from the comments and then open your browser and paste it. I wonder if that might work. son came down when you were answering. So.
Sorry.
My son came
What
down
happened?
when you were answering, so if I appeared distracted answering, I was
Oh, no
helping
worries.
him figure out what he's going to eat tonight.
Mm.
Usually I've ordered now. My Friday night ritual.
Yeah, that's the traditional thing. But you know what though, when we do get, well, let me put it this way: when you come down this way, Aaron, we're gonna have the smoker in full effect, and we'll have brisket and lamb, and we'll have everything.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
Mm.
yeah, we'll do it
Gosh,
all.
you're one of the few people I know, Derrick, that likes lamb.
Oh
Most
hell
people,
yeah, man!
I don't know if I've ever
I know.
had lamb. I don't think
It's
I've
got to
had
be
lamb
cooked right.
before.
If it's cooked bad, it's not good.
No,
What does lamb
listen,
taste like?
you can't smoke any meat badly,
True.
Okay.
and that's one of my things. So, but let me say this, Gwendolyn. For someone who is, they have been taught to repress their sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say to that
Okay.
person to help them to express it, to be
Uh,
open about it, and also to be educational to
Probably
people?
what I tell other people in the LGBT community who are trying to find themselves too. I just tell them that don't worry about what the label is and all that detail or noise. Just focus on what feels right and do what feels right for you. And the pieces will fall together and as you learn about yourself. Does that answer it?
Yeah, that's a perfect answer.
Boom. Um, Interesting enough too, now that I think about it, because I am being my authentic self and I'm very social butterfly now. I'm very truthful and honest and vulnerable with everyone. And I guess I do find I attract the most damaging people that want to explore who they are. So I get like a lot of people that are socially awkward or just message me because they just want to, have fun without seeing me as a person first, because media has
Yeah,
misrepresented transgender people as like sex fetish objects, as this, like we guys were all talking about, with the taboo and shame of it all. And
so
if you guys are up to it, watch Disclosure on Netflix. It's a
okay,
documentary about how transgender people have been.
got a question for you here,
Sure.
Gwendolyn, that came up in the chat.
Okay.
Tender Anna, she's asking, how long did it take you to tell your parents?
Okay. Well, I'm 34 now, and I came out around 26ish. Started transitioning.
Okay.
Uh, okay, so around 26, it took like a year and a half when I officially just said, "Hey, I think I might be transgender." And I went to Saskatoon or like my city's LGBT center, and maybe from the point of when I knew I think I might be transgender, it was like maybe a year or two into it, but it wasn't my choice. My dad was just kind of going through my folder. I left on the TV stand thing, and he gets excited about everything super easily, so it wasn't like a bad per se, but it kind of outed me and told my mom and my sister and stuff, and I was like, okay, I guess I gotta start telling people. Family's been mostly good though. There's just a few members, like for instance, I have one member who's a right-wing Christian conservative pro-life, so obviously we don't get along. Well, we get along, but we disagree on just about everything. But he won't use my pronouns, but he'll just say Gwen because he thinks. Yeah, I don't have to tell you about Christian.
Yeah, I think that the whole pronoun thing, you don't need to announce your gender. Just be who you are.
Exactly. And what I tell people that that don't want to respect pronouns, I just say, well, look, if your name and pronouns gets to be respected, why doesn't mine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how hard is it? You know, what's the big deal?
So it's like the bare minimum of human respect.
Yeah.
The bare effort. But it's
Yeah.
people's egos that get in the way, that want to control how others live their lives, which ironically is good for me.
You know,
Surprise there.
one of the things I think that's therapeutic for people who have been bullied a lot or judged a lot or shamed a lot, even if they're crystal clear on their gender identity, sexuality, I think they would like the LGBTQ community for me it's a healing community, because as a general my experience with them, and I know I'm generalizing, but at least in my experience, so open and non-judgmental, because they've been on the other end of that for so long. I think that there are just some people that I think need to hang out in those circles, because they'll find a lot of soul and healing for themselves in the process.
Yeah. Well, everybody's struggles needs to be validated.
Yeah.
And the second anyone does it, people get defensive, or like when you use the word privilege, a lot of people who are privileged misunderstand what that means. And so when I am talking to people what racism is, I use my identity as an example. Me being transgender makes me a marginalized community, and I get treated differently because of it. But my skin color doesn't add to my struggles, as with a transgender woman of color. So she would have to face both racism and discriminate for like transphobic behavior and misogyny and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so privilege doesn't mean you don't struggle, you don't suffer. Whatever you're struggling or suffering with, it's validated. But it's just good to know what privilege aspects we all have in our lives to help make sure we're not blind to what other people are struggling with.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, you know, hey, Gwendolyn, I want to thank you for coming on, for being so bold as to share your
I got no
story.
shame or regret anymore. I'm like applying to be a porn star. I got no shame left. I'm just living my life to the fullest. And
listen, keep shining, keep being golden. We appreciate you and we love you.
Yeah. I love you too.
Yeah.
I love you too.
Thanks, Mom.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
No problem.
And
all
if
right.
you ever want to come on for any more of these things, I'll be more than happy to.
No problem.
I think
okay.
You have a great weekend. Love you and peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And so there you have it. Well, that was interesting, because we got our first live guest.
Yeah. Good one to have too.
Yeah.
That was great. It was really good. You know, one of the things I love about that is, like you and I, we talk about race. I'm okay, white as they come. My family kept that line pure. We've talked about that.
What? What? You're white? Holy
I know
fuck!
I know.
Who the fuck have I been talking to all this time?
But they're just topics, you know, like I like you said this to me, Derrick, and I believe it. Until white people start talking about the problem of race, it's not going to fix, because it's not a black or, you know, red or yellow or whatever. It's a white person problem, and so white people need to fix it. And but there are also times, in order to fix it, we need to be using our voice. Is what I'm saying. We need to be using our voice to help these marginalized groups. But there's also a time when we need to acknowledge, I don't have a clue what it's like to live as a black person in America. I don't have a clue what it's like as a transgender woman in America. And so I just think it's great, man, that we covered this topic, but we also got to hear the voice of someone who is living it and experiencing. I want to defend the rights of the LGBTQ community, but it's more important for me to be able to hear from them.
And that's the thing, you know, I think that we need to be, we need to give a voice to people. I, as a black person in America, I know how important it is for someone to have given me a voice, to allow me to speak to power. And so when we have people like Gwendolyn, who, you know, who they're going through the transition of gender, that they're able to speak, and they're able to speak to power. I think that's really a big thing. That's I was just really so blessed by her, her presence tonight, because
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
So
Kind of.
no. C. Rodriguez, I told her to click the link and come on. She says, imagine being over 50, black and female. Well, I'm over 50, black and male. So here you go. But I don't know, Aaron. I think that's pretty much it. This was a really good outing, and being able to include someone from the audience, I think is
Yep.
absolutely awesome. I don't know if my sister is still out here, Sandy. If you're still on here, click the link, because I would love to have you on here for a minute. Just throwing it out here. She might be deep in her Cabernet by now.
Yeah, I may have to go. It sounds like the boys are starting to tear the house down. So.
Oh, I understand. I understand. Well, you know what? Like I said, I was really. I think this was a very good conversation. I think that this is something that we could go into in greater detail, but man,
Yeah, for sure.
This is one of those ones that's I was really feeling this, because I really feel that this is something that, y'all, let me say this. I'm going to say this and I'll shut up. Is that the whole concept of phreology is getting free from all of these different things that have held us in bondage. And theology has been one of these things that has kept humanity in bondage. Theology, religion, all of that, religiosity. And when you can get to the point where you could talk about these things openly, now you can get to a point of freedom. And that is the key. I mean, if we can just get to the point where we're no longer bound by our ethnicity, that we're no longer bound by our sexuality, that we're no longer bound by our theology, that at that point, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends of all ages, that we can actually talk about being free. And that's what this is about. It's all about helping each other. Because here, let me say this. I'm going to say one more thing. Aaron, you and I, and we talk a lot.
Yeah.
We're free. I mean, and when we talk, we talk about how good it is to be unencumbered by all of this religious bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we do this on Fridays, this is an opportunity for someone to hear something that gets them off the plantation. Y'all listen, Aaron and I, we are the Harriet Tubmans of religion.
Hey, I just want to give a shout out to our community. I love the community that's building. I mean, so many people watch every Friday faithfully. If we're not on, they're messaging us, hey, what's up? Having one tonight. I just love that we can see the comment, engage more on this new platform. But I just want to give a shout out to everybody that's, I feel like we're building a community of people that are creating in the world. I really believe that.
Yep, we are. And listen, I'm going to go back to a little bit over a year ago when I asked you and you said, hey, hell yeah.
Yeah. Never regretted it once. Regretted it. One of the best decisions I made.
So my
I had
man
some. Oh, go ahead.
Terry Wilson just joined in. He said, "Hey, big bro," and listen, Terry, I love and I appreciate you. And C. Rodriguez, we love and appreciate you. You've been a
Absolutely.
constant supporter of us, and we appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, man. I got to go keep my
Yep.
house from falling down. So
No problem. Hey, for everybody that's watching, we love you, and hope you have an
Yep.
awesome weekend. Aaron, I love you, and I will talk to you later, man.
love, man.
And that's it. Peace, y'all.
Peace out. Peace out. That's. I'm such
Yep.
a dweeb. Catch y'all later.
All right, man. All right. Bye.